Right, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know whether we've started. Yes, we've started the live stream. So I'm Councillor Philip Owen, Chairman of this committee, and I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee, which I've just indicated is being broadcast live. And I should also like to pay particular welcome to Elsie Marcus, who is sitting over here, who is a graduate in procurement and has joined us and is eager to learn. So she's come along to this committee to learn everything that she can. So with those few comments of welcome, I will move on to the items on the agenda. The first one being the minutes. Can I have your approval to sign them as a true record, those that were here? Thank you. Item number 2, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Helen Ann Smith for other reasons, and Councillor Hollis is substituting, and we have received apologies from Councillor Henry, and the perpetual sub, Councillor Creamer, is with us yet again, and it's always a joy for you to join us. Thank you. You're happy to accept those. Good. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members or officers? Nope. Good. So, if we can then turn to the local government ombudsman's decision, which is item number 4, and we have 3 cases set out in the papers where fault was found. This is becoming a usual pattern with EHC plans, unfortunately. I would remind members that the next item on the agenda is a 6-monthly review of progress that's been made in that sphere. So if you would bear that in mind when asking your questions, I would be grateful. So the first one, which is set out on page 13, is Mr. X complaining about the way the council has handled annual reviews of his child's health and care plan, and Mr. X says there was a delay in completing annual reviews and the council failed to issue a decision with appeal rights when he applied for a statutory reassessment. Anything officers want to add to this?
I would just like to apologise in terms of the position that we found ourselves in and the delays that were part of this case, which was a complex case. There has been an investigation. There's also been the learning taken from this investigation as well. And so we apologise for not just the delays, but also for the frustration caused as well. And we have learned from this in terms of reviewing the case. And so the compensatory offer that was made is outlined in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members on this particular case? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I know the next item obviously looks at a 6-monthly review. To use your words, there is a pattern here in terms of the EHC plans. And I've had a couple of cases recently and issues raised with me when I've been out and about talking to residents about the general support of the County Council for SEN provision and around EHCs. And I just wonder whether there is an opportunity, respecting what Linda said about learnings, constructive learnings going forward from these cases, is there an opportunity to get somebody independently outside to just take a look at the general provision of how we're dealing with issues around EHCs and SEN provision? Because I think I've made the point before, as Linda said, these are often very complex cases. They're often cases where there's already a lot of stress and strain in individual families. Angst can be caused when situations go wrong. Nobody wants a situation where it has to get to ombudsman stage. That's not helpful to the staff who are already working very hard. It's not helpful to the individual members. And I know I've made this point before, but it just worries me that we're getting individual cases here. I've had individual pieces of casework that touch on these service areas. I've had people say to me when I've been out and about talking to residents, they're concerned about how SEM provision, EHC provision is supported from the county council's perspective. And for me, it's not about pointing the finger or being critical, but it is about actually how can we collectively as councillors be supporting you as staff who are working in a very difficult environment under significant pressure to improve things so that those who are the most vulnerable in our community aren't having to go through what I imagine is quite a stressful process for them as well, going through an ombudsman case and the to and fro in the investigation, etc. So, I mean, I always think the response we get is fulsome, and clearly there's compassion in the team. The team want to, as you've said, Linda, apologise, rectify the situation. But I suppose it's a broader point, and where would that get taken? And I just think maybe the county council needs to reflect on could there be an outside view given about.
Is this something that the new board will actually be dealing with?
Yes.
I assumed it would, but I mean, you'd perhaps like to clarify that.
Yeah. 2 points, and not making excuses, but these are legacy cases. These are historical cases that we are picking up, and so the situation in the past is improving, as the report which Councillor Owen refers to, which I'll be coming to later, outlines that improvements are starting to be seen. And the main reason because of that is that, picking up from the Ofsted inspection, we have a priority action plan, the PAC, which outlines all the key areas we have to improve. And our timeliness for the 20 weeks on completion is one of those key areas. So much so that there's been investment in terms of financial investment and also staffing to help to mitigate some of those delays and to get us into that timeliness, which we are aiming towards. And that will take a bit of time to catch up because of the outstanding assessments, the outstanding annual reviews, and so there's also the new ones that are coming in as well. So we've got that timeliness which has to be addressed through that priority action plan. And that Ofsted inspection actually did that piece of work to drill down to see where are we, what are the blockages, what's happening, and also we're having to report to DFE on that on a monthly basis as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do think that we need to let the independent board, it is independently chaired by Dame Christina, do their work and see where we go from there. It might be after that we would want to look at something further. Councillor Hollis, you were next, and then Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for letting me part of the discussions today as Councillor Smith's substitute. But thanks to Belinda for that response. But really, I really wanted to go and delve into a bit of detail of Councillor Payne's question. So obviously, 2 of the complaints today relating to delays in producing the EHC plans, and of course they'll cost the council £8,100. And I think it's quite fair. You can't put a price on some of these children's care. We appreciate it's difficult, but obviously the shortcomings fall at the council's lap. I know, of course, it was debated only this morning in the Children's and Families Select Committee. In fact, Colin Pettigrew stated that we should expect to see these reports to come before this committee, more reports like this to come before the committee in the foreseeable future. And obviously the issue of poor communications was raised again. But I suppose just to delve in more detail with your response to Councillor Payne, what actually are we doing to improve this?
Well, isn't that set out in the report which follows on? We have a report next on the agenda which actually sets out what is being done to improve it. So perhaps we could save that question until then. Councillor Lee.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I appreciate you're the chairman of this committee, but I've asked the question to the officer. I don't know if it's possible to hear the response as part of this item.
I've given you the response. It's set out in the report which follows on, and the officers will be invited to add anything. And if you want to still ask a question of something that you want further explanation on, then I'm more than happy that it be done at that time.
If you have something to hide as administration, that's perfectly fine. But the whole point of this committee surely is to ask questions. It's 2 agenda items, not 1. This question's relevant to this one. But if you had administration's got something to hide, that's fine. We'll wait.
I'm not sure that I've got anything to hide at all. That's why
But you don't want the question answered.
I'm just suggesting that you ask it at the same time as other questions.
I've
You've asked about improvement, and that's what this next report is
I've
about.
asked the question.
And you will get an answer.
And you're refusing for the officer to answer
No,
that question.
of course I'm not. I'm telling you, if you'd read the report that follows on, you might have got the answer. Anyway, Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you very much. I've been on this committee quite a bit of time now, and we keep being told it's historical, it's historical. When are we going to stop having that excuse, it's historical, and actually start taking responsibility? Is quite a lot of it is communication issues. Yes, we've seen the communication issues come over months ago. We're losing £8,500 from budget. Do we need to be looking at, like I've said on many meetings, looking at increasing the budget, so we can have the extra money going into services instead of it using in fines? Would that make any difference? And the second question is when are we going to see these historical complaints stop? Communication is one of the biggest issues that we're having fined against us. Thank you.
Yes, we've increased the budget already.
Yes.
So that has happened. Yeah, so that answers that part of it. In terms of the historical cases, this one was 2022. So what we've tried to do is to profile any of the other historical cases, but the decision sits with the Ombudsman. So the findings, as you'll see with some of these other cases, the findings have worked for the council, not against the council. So already we're seeing an improvement in terms of the Ombudsman's decisions, which are reflecting the better progress that we are making as well. And the communications are improving. We are sending newsletters, we're sending out regular letters to any of our parents who are still awaiting an EHCP. So the communications are improving as well, and we've had some positive feedback from that as well.
Thank you.
I appreciate all that, and I knew all that. I just wanted to draw it out in the question, so thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, on page 4, paragraph 38, it refers to Mr. X, and I have some sympathy with this, actually, seemingly preferring a paper copy of his report as opposed to digital, because I think I'm like him. It's all very well having a computer. I don't know how to make notes on it, so I print stuff off. So I do have some sympathy there. But and then later on in page on paragraph 45, the Ombudsman has suggested that has picked up on this. And he says it's not for the Ombudsman to tell the council how to do things, but if there is a bit of a pattern emerging for clients who may be struggling to be able to access the online version, that would prefer a paper version, which I know is very 20th century, but we have to accept that people do prefer good old-fashioned pen and paper. Is the council minded or looking to find a way of understanding that more and working more towards that?
We do that. Yes, we do that already pre and post 16 as well. But Louise, if you want to come
if any parent or carer has difficulty accessing the digital platform, and Councillor Butler, I have sympathy with your position too. We always offer a paper-based alternative.
Thank you very much. Answer your question.
Oh yes. So I assume what do we have to feed this back to the Ombudsman, or because no, we don't, do we? No, just thinking of the procedure here. So no, that's fine. But thank you for the clarification.
Okay, I think we've given that one an airing. Can we move on to the next one, which where the council failed to meet its legal duty to secure the provision in Ms Z's education, health and care plan, and it caused her to miss out on provision. Is there anything you wish to add from an officer point of view to this one?
Perhaps we'll see if there's any questions, but I do have some observations that I would like to make.
Please.
Perhaps in response to questions.
Okay. Any comments or questions on this one? No? So do you still want to make some observations? Thank you.
Simply that I felt this was a balanced scorecard of an Ombudsman's decision, in the sense that fault was not found about the process in any way. Fault was not found about our willingness to get the voice of the young person, however challenging that was. And there were some individual circumstances that made it quite difficult to get some of that provision in place. and I think it's shared in the Ombudsman's report, so I'll just bring it out, that the young person couldn't decide what A-levels she wanted to study. Now, in commissioning A-level provision, the local authority has to commission subject matter experts. We cannot commission a biology teacher for religious education. So there were some factors around that which contributed to the delay. I apologise unreservedly for the fact there was a delay, but I think the amount of evidence we put into the Ombudsman about how hard we had tried, and the fact that the Ombudsman did not direct compensation at the highest end of the scale, I think perhaps is reflective of some consideration of the local authority's efforts.
Thank you for that additional information. I think it probably shows the value of actually challenging and working with the Ombudsman on these complaints, as committee requested, that we do engage much more with the Ombudsman and not just simply accept what they hand down. So we've dealt with that one. The third one is Miss X complained the council failed to properly support her as a care leaver. You'll see that fault was found by the council, that there was fault by the council, but it didn't cause injustice because we appear to have used the wrong complaints procedure. Well, I really think that's a little bit over the top, but do you want to say anything on that from the complaints department? You used the wrong procedure.
Yeah, I know this is a recorded meeting, so I'll be diplomatic. I mean, we tried very, very hard to engage with this young lady, and she's put in quite a few complaints over the years regarding the same kind of issue, really, but never responded back. Yeah, we tried to engage with her. We tried to ask her actual root cause, what her main concerns were, and would never come back to us. So we, to quote Councillor Owen there, we challenged the Ombudsman politely but assertively to say, how can we put it through the process when she's not told us her definite cause? Plus, the complaints were 6, 7, 8 years ago. We're only supposed to deal with complaints in the last 12 months. But we were willing to at least address or liaise with the lady to discuss her concerns, but she never came back to us. And I think I've mentioned in the report, we did actually issue, where she did engage with us, we issued a response, or the department issued a response, and didn't come back to us on the back of that response either. She just then issued another complaint 6 months later about the same thing. And there we are.
Thank you very much for that. I think it put the council officers in an impossible position. That was very diplomatically put. A little bit different from our pre-agenda meeting, but there we are. That wasn't being recorded. Any comments or questions? I think that's fairly straightforward. I'll move the recommendations that are set out.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
All in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, which is the response to Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's Decision 2023. And you have the report set out in front of you, and we have 2 recommendations there on page 5 of the report, which I move.
Chairman, I second. Is that my right to speak?
Thank you. Any comments from officers in support of this, or are you happy for it just to go? Yes?
The progress that is being made is really reflective of the extra staff that we've been able to fund with the extra funding and investment that's been made. So as the report outlines, our 6 new EHCP writers are absolutely delivering to a very, very tight timeline. Our 6 coordinators are working very closely with our families and our young people. And also with 3 senior practitioners extra as staffing capacity. So the increase in staffing is helping us move on. So much so that, as the report outlines, over the summer we've been able to move a backlog of 450 EHCPs. So we're beginning to see that progress. There's still work to be done, but by looking at the assessment process, we're also now focusing on the backlog in terms of any of the annual reviews, which have to be completed within a year. So that extra staffing is meaning that we're getting into the timeliness that we should have been in previously as well. So that means that it's mitigating against some of the complaints, which are actually we're beginning to see a reduction in the complaints as well. Thank you.
Yes, I do hope so, because I was in one of my local schools a couple of weeks or so ago, and they were saying that there was still an issue over getting these plans completed and the annual reviews completed. So I hope we're going to get on top of this very, very quickly now.
Yes, and part of the whole of the system is the work from our educational psychologists as well and our EPs. And there's been a slight delay in recruiting more EPs. There's a national shortage of EPs as well. So it is all part of the process as well, but that is going to improve as we're able to employ more educational psychologists as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, it's just a question for clarification, basically. Item 3, the increase, the level 3 or an increase by 34.3%, which is quite a big jump over the last year. Is that due to coming out of COVID or something? Because the graph for future prediction shows a fairly steady rise, but that's quite a big jump from last year. So
Yes, that's part of it. As children have returned to school as well, so that process means that the number of EHCPs has, and it's nationally as well as locally, has increased. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
No COVID, then it will be steady.
Sorry. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I think it is worth saying, because it's been subject for discussion in this committee a lot, congratulations to the team for the effort that's been made in terms of the 400. It's very easy to sit here and ask questions and criticise. It's also incumbent on us to accept when there has been progress made, and clearly there has been progress made. So, congratulations, Linda, to you and the wider team who are responsible. Just to understand, in terms of, it's great we've set out that trying to get above 80% and then hopefully to the 100% within the next 12 to 24 months, as you set out in the report. Who does the check on quality as well as quantity? Because obviously you're clearing EHCPs quickly, which is great, but where's the quality assurance to make sure that within those that we're clearing? And then the second thing, just for my sort of naivety, is where does the SEND Improvement Board and the Partnership Assurance, the SEND Partnership Assurance, where do they report to? Who is receiving their honest, independent view about what's going on in the broader sphere of SEND provision? Because, Councillor Owens had it raised with him in a school. I meant what I said earlier. I'm not saying it to be awkward. It has been raised with me by residents that the whole issue of SEND provision is perhaps not felt to be as supportive as it ought to be, and it's in all of our interest to try and make that make that happen and improve.
Thank you. Yeah. In terms of the quality assurance, the senior practitioners, that's their new role to actually QA. And also I'm working very closely with Nottingham City Council, and we've got a moderated QA process now set up. So that's also an improvement as well. So we can moderate each other's EHCPs. In terms of the SEND partnership and the board, we had 2 high-level meetings a fortnight ago with DFE, where we're held to account, and that's Colin, Peter, myself. We are absolutely held to account on the performance. With regard to our parents, carers, and also our schools, I think it's important that we communicate that message to them from the feedback that I've received today. I'll make sure that we ensure that our parents and carers and schools understand, know, and clearly can be cited on the progress that we're making, but also who is overseeing all of this with regards to the DFE and also Ofsted. Part of the work that Ofsted are doing is a deep dive, and that deep dive a fortnight ago was to look at all of the priorities plus the themes as well. They wanted to know what progress are we making at this point after the inspection, bearing in mind in 18 months, which is now less than a year, there will be a full re-inspection as well. So those deep dives are taking place. And also, in terms of their feedback, which was relatively positive at this stage. I haven't seen the report yet, so it would be unfair of me to add any other comments at this stage.
The Ofsted deep dives that are taking place in advance of obviously a more thorough inspection, where will they be reported to, Linda?
They will be reported on the website once they become public in the public domain.
Okay, the report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that is carried. Right, the next one on the agenda, item number 6, update on use of resources by councillors. Again, thanks very much. Again, you have the report in front of you, and there are 3 recommendations set out on page 42, which I move.
Chairman, I second reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? No? Yes, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. You wouldn't expect me to raise Councillor Boyd Elliott's Great Wall of China mileage claims, but I believe that this was discussed at your last meeting. Paragraph 2 of the report, it states categorically the protocols guiding principles include the need to be mindful of costs and not using resources for political purposes. This is quite correct, Mr. Chairman, and sets the tone of which councillors are expected to work, always mindful of the impact on this council's finances and workings to ensure the office of councillor is not abused for political gain. This brings me to such an abuse, one that the leader of the council apologised for and described himself as naive. It took him 4 days to abuse his position as the mayoral candidate for the Tories in the East Midlands Combined Authority election. He was
just a minute. Which resource on this report are you referring to?
He was caught using his office for a political interview, Mr. Chairman,
right,
and County Hall as a backdrop for his photos. And we're talking about using resources of this council, which I'm sure you'd argue the building is a sizable resource. Since then, an investigation has been launched and found that no staff broke the rules. That Councillor Bradley has admitted abusing his position, but as we don't have any room charges for this type of office, Mr. Bradley doesn't have to pay anything, simply because we don't have a charge already outlined. We have asked him to make a donation to the chairman's charity, but this request was ignored. My point, Mr. Chairman, is that this is an abuse. This abuse is going on throughout the council. At the last full council meeting, I told the story about how I campaigned to get a road fixed in Huthwaite for 5 years, arranged highways visits and countless phone calls via East Midlands. Then all of a sudden, the phone calls stopped. Officers stopped returning my emails also. Then Mr. Ben Bradley turns up with Lee Anderson MP and officers of the council to announce the county council were fixing the road. This abuse of council resources is currently being looked at. I genuinely believe the council officers are being pressured into not releasing information to opposition councillors. I genuinely believe that we are going to see much more of this type of political abuse of resources, and as they try to desperately hold Red Wall MPs to help them hold their seats and help elect Ben Bradley as the new mayor. So, Mr. Chairman, what more can we do to stop this council being abused in this manner? And further to this, the leader of Nottinghamshire Council told Nottingham Evening Post on the 22nd of September that the authority was putting clear rules together on the matter. That being the council leader misusing his office, what part will this committee play in ensuring these clear rules are in place and that MPs like Ben Bradley cannot cheat their way into being elected again? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it almost beggars belief that you come out with a written statement such as that. You seem to be complaining about potholes being fixed that you've asked should be fixed, and I don't know why you should complain about that. And you complain about the leader of the council having his photograph taken in his office at no cost to this council, and the fact that officers then found that there was no breach of any rule. It really just beggars belief, quite frankly, that you come out with this sort of thing. Can we stick to the report now? The report has been circulated. I've moved the Councillor Payne, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Can somebody just explain to me what, perhaps this has already been explained before in a previous meeting I wasn't at, but I can remember when we did the review about informing people about use of photocopying and direct mails and things that were above a threshold so that people weren't seem to be abusing. Can somebody just explain to me that I don't understand what the purpose of the table is around out of contract charges, and what does it really tell us? I'm not sure what it really. I'm not sure what it really tells us as a committee, other than that there are a few charges that.
It's really flagging that as an issue. So part of bringing this to the committee each time comes up here is to if we can see something that hasn't been reported to the committee in the past. So we didn't used to bring this. It was only since September 2021 that we've started bringing this information. It's really for us. It's flagging up that there's an issue with process. I think more than the members involved, because I'm aware that certainly most of the members on that list have been in touch with ICT. They've flagged that they're going abroad. They've tried to do everything they can to stop charges being incurred, really, and we still seem to be getting it as an issue, really. So as much as anything, it's for us to report the committee, say, look, we've still got a problem. What we are trying to address it. I understand there's going to be a change of providers imminent, and we're hoping at that point to, as the recommendation says, to issue some further guidance at that point, really. Whenever there's a point that isn't really covered up to this point. So when this report first came in, it was really all about photocopying and it was about things like that, room hire and stuff like that, really. So it's about just keeping a grip on it. You can see, we've still got an issue that was being reported a year ago, and that for us is flagging alarm bells. But we don't think the members themselves are necessarily to blame. They're clearly trying their best to limit these charges, but we are still seeing it. So as the committee had previously agreed, bring it along. Let's see if we've got an issue with it, and that's what we're continuing to do.
We're just being...
It's helpful, Keith, but I just slightly worry. We live in a world where, and I understand the rationale of why this came here. We live in a world where people are quite inclined to make trouble perhaps where there isn't trouble. And I just slightly worry that we're producing charts that, if we're not careful, will lead to somebody drawing the wrong conclusions. And so I just, if there is an issue about the phone contract or whoever it is, the broadband provider, then sure, that's a process we just need to deal with as an organisation and institution. What I wouldn't like to see is these 6 or 7 or whatever it is members, somebody picking this up. And we know there are people who make FOIs and want to criticise, and sometimes legitimately. We should be open to criticism as elected members, but I wouldn't want somebody drawing a conclusion that these people have acted above and beyond their contract. And you could address that if it was raised with you, but this is a public document. It's out there in the public. So I just think we need to think through the reporting through to here. Is it doing what is intended to do? If you see the point I make, I'm not saying we should be free of criticism or we should hide from transparency or scrutiny. I'm all for that, but I get the thing about photocopying. I absolutely understand that, because there were incidences previously where there was concern about people using photocopying or the outgoing mails for matters that maybe weren't perhaps as clearly cut for local authority purposes or their role as a councillor. But I just slightly worry this thing around contracts might end up leading people to draw the wrong conclusion, if you see what I mean.
I'm sure.
Anyway, I've made my point.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm grateful for it. Of course, there will be those that want to draw the wrong conclusions, and I think it's a matter of balancing that against the need for transparency. If we don't print it, and somebody, as you say, FOIs it for whatever reason, and it then has to come out, it looks as though it could look as though we are trying to suppress it. The officer has made it quite clear that nothing wrong with it. It's just over and above the normal contract charges. We're not happy with the contract, so we're going to look to change the contract. And so I believe it's important that we have that degree of transparency so that nobody can say, well, I can't stop them saying, but I'm sure they will, that we're trying to hide something. We're not. It's all out there in the public domain, and people can comment on it as they see fit. There has been nothing that has been wrongly done. But I take on board what you say. Yeah, it will set a few hairs running somewhere. But I think it's important that we've heard the message now from officers. Thank you. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, it's on the same one again, and I can agree with everything you're saying, but as Michael was saying as well. It's just that on the paper one we have a limit of £20, etc. On this one we actually don't know what it is, and I'm assuming that out of contract would be completely different for a backbencher than it is for a cabinet member, for instance. So perhaps some explanation of we don't even know what the top limit of the contract is. So it just looks like you're just out of contract, but you can draw again your own conclusions of what the contract is. Is it £100 a year? Is it £1,000 a year? So it's just for clarity that some of these members will be 2 or 3%, but the actual price may or may not reflect it, because I don't know how the contract works. Does it work the same for every councillor, or are there elements in it?
Yeah, I think it's just in terms of the way that the contract was constructed at the time, in terms of how the charging mechanism works. And I think some of us in a personal capacity sometimes gets caught out on roaming charges. So it's just about how to make sure, recognising that members do, as senior officers do, and still carry on their activity in terms of working. So you might recognise they're on holiday, but I congratulate members in terms of their thought to carry on working throughout the whole of the year. It's just about recognising that going forward in terms of how we do the contracts. We have a number of negotiations with the current contract provider who was trying to impose extra penalties, which we have managed to avoid.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, and I'm on that list. And it's interesting because I don't take my phone on holiday. But however, as most people will know, is I'm dyslexic, so I use the phone for my. It's the only device I have because it's got systems on that I use for my dyslexia. So it'd be really interesting to know if them charges are because I'm using it more than other people, or if there's something else going. Because I've never took it on a holiday, so it'd be interesting to know why I've been lodged with them charges. So it'd be interesting to speak to the officers about that.
Councillor Hollis, you indicated.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I'm just obviously everything that's relevant that's been said today, but I am conscious that I have asked 2 questions at this committee. I don't know what the usual procedure is, whether you don't answer substitutes questions, but I'm just trying to ascertain a point of fact. So the Ashfield Independents or Independent Alliance have been allocated some group officers at this council. If I choose to hold a personal event in there or a political fundraiser, do I not have to make a contribution to the council's lighting or car parking? Or because you said the phrase that Mr. Bradley's officers are completely free, do we not put tables in there and furnish it and have electronic door systems? I'm just trying to ascertain the difference between, we're talking about a report of misusing council's resources, of which you seem to forget the building is a resource. Yet it's okay, even though he admitted it. You said he didn't do it. He admitted it in black and white. Maybe you misread that. But I'm just trying to ascertain exactly what this committee can do to stop things like that happening again, because we all make mistakes. I'm just trying to ascertain that if we held a political fundraiser, that would be okay.
I didn't say that he didn't do it. He clearly conducted an interview in his office. What I said was I didn't think that there were any additional costs or burdens placed on the resources of the county council as a result of doing that interview. Could have stood outside and had the Nottinghamshire County Council logo there and have done the interview. He is leader of the county council after all, and you're really struggling to drag this up. It really is pretty pathetic if that's the best you can do. Anyway, the report has been moved and seconded. Yeah.
Can I just suggest that, because this is going to go round and round and
Oh,
round.
of course, yes.
Can I just suggest to the monitoring officer, it's a matter for you, Marge, to determine this is appropriate, to just circulate some guidance to all councillors about what is appropriate use of the officer. Because I know, for instance, in my role as a county councillor, coming to county council, not in a partisan way, I have done a video outside before talking about the fact I was bringing a petition. Now, I would view that as a legitimate thing to do, but I didn't make a partisan point, but we've always been under the advice in the borough council that you shouldn't use the council's building for partisan platforms or for partisan videos. And I just think without getting into the individual debate about this issue, it would be helpful if the monitoring officer just let councillors know what should we be doing and should we not be doing, because otherwise somebody is going to find themselves the wrong side of the rules. And I know you make reference in here in this document, don't you, to appropriate uses, etc. But I just think you need to set that out clearly to people so that they know what's appropriate and what isn't.
I'm more than happy to clarify. I think there is guidance out there. One of the other things I was wondering while I was listening to the discussion is about perhaps being clear and setting out the requirements of this reporting that we've agreed at this committee, and a little bit of context. I was thinking that when you were talking earlier might just help. It's saying this, it's not saying that, just to help clarify things a little bit. And the reference earlier on to the bit about protocols was in respect of the mayoral campaign, where we are drafting and agreeing protocols for all across all the constituent councils and across the 4 main councils. So there's probably just a little bit, I think you're probably right, something about clarification would be helpful.
Thank you. So with that clarification, can we move to the vote? All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that's carried. The next item on the agenda, financial regulation waivers. You've got the list there in front of you, set out starting on page 55, and the recommendation at the bottom of page 3 of the report is that members of this committee support the detail contained in the report, which I move.
Chairman, I second.
Is there any comments or questions? No. Can we move to the vote then? All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that is carried. The next item on the agenda is the Best Value Authorities Guidance Consultation, and that is set out on page 65, or starting on page 65. And we have the report, and the recommendation is set out on page 72, that you consider and note the response to the consultation. So I move that recommendation.
Chairman, I second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Councillor Hollis.
Said with much enthusiasm. Thank you, Chairman. In the report, it says that the consultation is on the proposed statutory guidance for local authorities on the best value duty. Can I ask whether this will extend to the ARC Partnership and via East Midlands? Will they be governed by the proposed statutory guidance on the best value duty? And if they are included, what was considered in the council submission? And I have already raised questions about the use of subcontractors by via, if this is value for money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Section 151, Officer, it's your report, so.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question, Councillor Hollis. That was particularly part of their response to, if I go to the bottom of page 70 onto page 71, it's around partnerships, including companies that a local authority would use. So our response was that it should include that in terms of the guidance, in terms of looking at our whole universe, in terms of the way that services are provided. As to your specific question about best value, that is, I would deal with that in a different place than this committee.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? The report's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is item number 9, which is a report on the attendance at the Local Government Association conference. This committee did say that it would like a report back from members who attended, because we approved the expenditure and attendance at that committee, and so you have that report there in front of you, and the recommendation is to note the report and going forward, summaries of key messages from attended conferences be circulated to committee members as briefing notes. So I move the recommendations.
Chairman, second.
Any comments or questions? No. All in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that's carried. And the next item, the last item, is the work programme, which again is set out in the committee papers. And we've got a recommendation at the top of page 120, which I move.
Second, Chairman.
Any comments or questions? No. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed at 2